In past videos, I've shown you these Jabbas that I 3D printed using various colors of translucent resin. We've got green, red, blue. I've done clear that I made a lamp out of in another video. And these are really cool looking. I really like the effects that these have, but it kind of made me want more. I wanted to see if I could maybe do a multicolored effect with 3D printing, instead of maybe painting. I wanted to recreate this nice translucent effect. You can light it up if you want. So I did some experimenting. This has been quite a while ago that I started this experimenting, by the way, but bear with me here. This is one of the experiments I did. The idea with these was that I would start out with one color of resin and then gradually add, in this case, green to get, a bit more of a gradient look, and then finally have maybe pure green resin at the top. I didn't switch out. I didn't do it very scientifically. Let's put it that way. I didn't switch out all the resin, and I didn't measure anything, and I was just trying to see what it would look like. And, it's not bad. It definitely does prove that you can easily change colors during a resin print just by sort of pausing it. In this case, I don't even think I paused it. I think I just sort of poured in some while it was going. But it's not a fantastic effect either, and it's not something you can easily control, really. Also, you'll notice that, here there's a definite line between this color and that one, and I think it's a little bit less distinct, but you can see it up here as well. So, I don't think this approach where you sort of change the resins mid-print is exactly going to do what I want it to do. And so what do I want it to, what do I want to do? Maybe I should explain that. Ideally, I'd want something with nice, smooth gradients between the colors, and something that would allow me to maybe recreate an entire rainbow on one piece. I think that would be really cool looking. I like rainbows. I think they're they're cool. I mean, I'm a sort of a child of the 70s and early 80s in the sense that, there were a lot of rainbow aesthetic things out there, from Robin Williams' suspenders on Mork and Mindy to the original Apple logo. So I think that's pretty cool. And, even today we have Pride and things like that, which I am definitely in favor of. So, in other words, rainbows are cool. I want to make a rainbow Jabba. Let me figure out how to do that. That was my approach here. So anyway, this, not really a great approach, but I did try it with some other colors. This one was purely translucent, and then I added a little blue, a little more blue, and I think I was a little bit more successful in getting a gradient here, but you can still see there's a sharp line between the blue and the translucent, for example, and between the red and the light blue there. So in terms of getting a gradient, it is challenging. And, if you're going to do something like a rainbow, you can't just be adding resin like I did here. I was adding blue to the translucent gradually. You'd have to change out the resin every time completely, and that would be a huge pain. So I wanted something that would be a little bit less work. By the way, before we move on here, this is not directly related to what we're going to be talking about today, but I also tried adding sort of glitter to my prints. This was one of the first ones I tried. I don't even know if you can tell, because I underestimated how much I would need to add. It's quite a bit that you have to add. There's another one. Probably can't really tell. So this is the end result here. Glittery Jabba. This one actually turned out really nice, and you can tell, you can really see the glitter there. I would say, boy, it does work to add very fine glitter to 3D prints in resin, but it's a little tricky to get the amount right, and it will end up going everywhere. Basically you need to get a separate build vat just to use with glitter, I think, because it's going to end up everywhere. But yeah, I just thought I'd show that one off as well. So anyway, the point is, that is not going to work, and I got to thinking, what could I do to recreate a rainbow on Jabba, or any other 3D print for that matter? And it reminded me of something. You may not be aware of this, but one of my other hobbies is collecting and refurbishing old computers, particularly Macintosh computers like this iBook. I just really like a lot of old Mac stuff. And my hobby is kind of getting ones that probably don't work or don't work completely and making them look as good as they can. In some cases, better than brand new by replacing, say, a dead hard disk with an SSD, replacing a battery, that kind of thing. In any case, this iBook, this kind of iBook, the original colorful ones, has kind of a problem nowadays in that these Apple logos here will fall out. The glue that is gluing them in just kind of fails over time, and this Apple logo, which I think is made of acrylic or something, just falls out and is lost. So oftentimes, if you do find one of these used, it won't have an Apple logo, or it'll be missing the leaf part at least. And that's what I had with some of my iBooks. I really wanted to be able to repair or replace this logo because it's pretty important for the general look of the machine. But they don't, as far as I know, have replacement ones available anywhere. So what I did was to buy some polyester resin and some polyester resin pigments. These ones right here, just stuff from Amazon. And I used an old junk iBook as a kind of a mold to make my own Apple logos out of. And after a while, it took some experimentation, but I was able to turn out some replacement ones. And that's, in fact, what you're looking at right here is a replacement for the Apple logo. You can see that it's got a little bit of kind of modeling on the top. It's not totally smooth like the actual logo would be, but you can only see that from a very certain angle. So normally when you're looking at this, it looks just fine, and I'm pretty happy with how this one turned out. In fact, I did it for not just the Tangerine, but also the Key Lime iBook as well. Used the same technique, and worked out pretty well, I think. But, you know, that left me with this whole big box of pigments and a big bottle of polyester resin, as a matter of fact. I did use them again in another project. You may recall I made this Frog Lady figurine in a previous video, and in addition to printing everything out of just, 3D printing resin, I also used the polyester resin and the blue pigment for the liquid, quote-unquote liquid, inside there. So I have been using it for something, but I thought, probably I could just use this resin and essentially brush it on the surface of a 3D print, and maybe, because it's translucent, it would kind of just color it and make it look, as if I had printed it that way. At least that was my hope. And if it did work, I would be able to kind of smooth the gradations, the transitions between colors, and accomplish something that I wouldn't be able to accomplish just by 3D printing alone. So the first step was to prepare a 3D model that would be just a shell of Jabba with some holes on the underside so that I could clean out the resin from inside and also the support material. I printed on the Elegoo Saturn 3D printer in translucent uncolored resin. I think this looks pretty cool when it's printing, by the way. So here we have that translucent print that I showed you just a second ago. I've now cleared it off, cleaned it off with alcohol and let it dry, but I haven't yet cured it, which you would normally do to make it as hard as it can get, sort of a final curing stage. And I haven't also sprayed it with any translucent, clear coat to make it more clear. That is a big difference, with these translucent prints. Just spraying it with some gloss coat makes a huge difference in terms of how much you can see through them. But for now, what we're going to be doing is taking those pigments that I showed you, the resin pigments, and brushing them on just with a paintbrush, and using a brush to kind of mix the colors together where they come together and make a gradient, so that there's not a harsh line anywhere, and just have it kind of blend from one extreme to the other. I think because those pigments, unlike paint, for example, are transparent, or translucent at least, it'll still preserve a lot of the translucency of the clear resin print here, and it should be a pretty cool effect when we're done. But first of all, I'm going to go ahead and glue these pieces together. Now you may notice that this print is on the yellow side. That is very common with the translucent resins that I've used. Even if you don't kind of over cure them, which is especially bad for yellowing, just during the printing process, they can turn pretty yellow, I've found. As I said, I haven't even cured this one yet, and yet it's somewhat yellow, although it really does depend, of course, on the lighting and what you're looking at next to it. It's not that bad, I think, in maybe more forgiving lighting environment. But we're not going to worry about it. The yellowing should not be visible once we've applied all of the pigments to it. So here are the colors that I'm going to be using. We're going to be using 6 different colors today: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. I'm not going to try and recreate indigo somehow. So I'm just going to be using some very cheap semi-disposable brushes with it, because I am not entirely sure if I'm going to be able to clean them afterward.
But before we get started, I'd like to tell you about today's sponsor, SKILLSHARE. SKILLSHARE is an online learning community with thousands of classes on a wide variety of topics, including fine art, design, and photography. There are no ads, and they're launching new premium classes all the time, so you're sure to find something that interests you. Recently, I've been taking the class How to Make a Professional Puppet for Television and Film by Adam Krutinger. In it, he shows you how to make a very professional-looking puppet from scratch, including how to make a pattern for the puppet, how to choose and use the best foam and fur, how to sew them together, and how to style the puppet that you eventually do make. I'm not sure if I'm ever actually going to put this into use, but it really made me feel like I could do it if I decided to do so, and it was fun to watch in any case. The first 1,000 people to click the link in the video description will get a 1-month free trial of SKILLSHARE so you can explore your creativity.
So here we have the finished product. As you saw, I sprayed it with the clear coat, and then I used a heat gun to try and sort of accelerate the drying process, because I noticed after waiting what would normally be more than enough time, it was still fairly tacky. And I think the heat gun did help a little bit, but really just leaving it to dry for much longer than normal seem to do the trick. It's basically all dry at this point. Maybe just ever so slightly tacky in a couple places, but I think that'll go away as well over time. In fact, I'm fairly certain of it because I actually made one of these a while back. This one was sort of a proof of concept of this whole, method that I'm using here. And this one was tacky as well for a while, but it did completely dry eventually. I think I did a better job on the distribution of colors on the new one, by the way. This one has a bit too much yellow here. But in any case, here it is. I'm really happy with how this looks. If you want to take a closer look, you can see it's got a translucent look to it. It looks almost like glass or candy. It looks kind of like a Jolly Rancher or something like that. But, it definitely does not look painted. In fact, you can still see a little bit through the material itself, which is what I was going for. And I think this has a lot of potential, this technique, if you wanted to use different colors, maybe even just one or two colors that blend into each other and things like that. I think I'm going to be doing some experimenting with this in the future. In fact, I wanted to try one more thing, which is to see what this would look like lit up. So let's go ahead and try that. So here we have the LED light panel that I've shown in some of my previous videos. And I'm just going to turn off my studio lights here and see what it looks like. Now you can barely see anything. Boom. Now to some degree, the camera is going to be compensating for the brightness of the light and everything, so it may not look exactly the way it does in person. But I think it's a pretty cool effect as well, especially if I could do what I did when I made the lamp in an earlier episode and kind of mask off this extra light here and just have this part light up. It would look pretty cool. Anyway, just thought I would see what that looked like. This video was brought to you with the support of my patrons on Patreon, including these Palace VIPs right here and Angelica Brady. Click the link in the video description if you'd like more information about how you can help support the channel.